Welcome back to Trash Talks, the official podcast of Second Life, where environmental conservation meets innovation. We're combining drone tech, AI, community, and research to restore our oceans and give the planet a second chance. From drone-powered cleanups to community-led activism, every week we dive deeper into another topic that we hope will inspire you for change. My name is Chiara Paternostro. I'm an intern here at Second Life, and I'm really excited to be one of your hosts today.
My name is Olivia. I will be co hosting this episode, and I'm also an intern at Second Life. To jump right into the topic, currently the world generates approximately 2.24 billion tons of municipal solid waste annually. So, to picture that, imagine more than 800,000 Olympic swimming pools that are filled with garbage, and most of it's coming straight from the cities.
Yeah, and by 2050, global waste is projected to increase by 70%, primarily in urban areas of the global south, driven by rising consumption and inadequate waste infrastructure.
And this waste doesn't just vanish, it's handled by people. Informal waste pickers around the world, many of whom live in or near dump sites, are the invisible backbone of these waste management systems. They are the ones who sort, recycle, and recover materials, often without any rights, recognition, or basic protections.
And the spaces where this plays out are toxic. From Garbologists in Ghana, once one of the world's largest e-waste sites, to fresh kills in New York City. These places show how urban systems push waste to the margins, with devastating effects on health, ecosystems, and nearby communities.
And this is a global injustice that's really embedded in the system. So, countries in the global north will regularly ship waste to the global south under the label of recycling, but critics call it plastic colonialism because it shifts the burden onto communities that are least responsible for this overconsumption in the first place.
And to Sorry. And today we're not just talking about trash, we're unpacking the social, economic, and political forces that shape how cities deal with waste and the people who make it work.
And here to help us do that, we're joined by someone who knows this world inside and out, Sonia Maria Dias. She is the regional coordinator for Latin America at the Global Alliance of Waste Pickers and has spent her career spotlighting waste pickers as essential workers, climate actors, and leaders in urban justice.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Sonia. Could you share a little bit more about your work and what you've done in the past and what you're currently working on?
Thank you very much for this invitation, and I'll begin by correcting my title. I'm not the regional coordinator for Latin America. I am WIGOS, Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing, Global Waste Specialist. And I've been actually a kind of garbologist at WIGO. I say garbologist because I am a sociologist by training, and my doctorate was in political sciences. But I specialized in solid waste management early on in my career and had the pleasure and the honor to work at my city cleaning agency, and my city is a city called Belo Horizonte, and it is in the southeast of Brazil. And my whole experience as a sociologist, both as a former city officer, but also my scholarly studies, both my master's and my PhD, was on the topic of how we can, through solid waste management, improve livelihoods, create decent work for the urban working poor. And in doing so, I have joined forces with other organizations in the past and still today who are working in terms of supporting the organizing process of workers, both here in my city, also at the national state. I supported the organizing of waste speakers and supported the creation of what became the International Alliance of Waste Pickers. Yeah, this is a little bit about me.
Yes, I heard you call yourself a garbologist. Can you tell us what that means to you and how you ended up working in the world of waste? Was there a moment that really pulled you into this field from sociology and into the waste world?
Yes, there was. Actually, I when I started my career as a sociologist, I started working in an urban development program. At that point in time, and I'm talking about mid 1980s, there were a lot of informal settlements in my city, Belo Horizonte. And traditionally, cities they had a kind of approach to informal settlements, which was let's just reallocate these people, usually to the periphery, and they were not the approach was not related to bringing in development and urban infrastructure to the places where people lived. So in the mid 80s, there was a shift here in my city, and we are one of the first cities in the world that really uh, started to look at the rights to the city, at the rights of people living in former settlements to have improvements. And so a group of, there was a program run by our state government. And this program was very unique because it had engineers, it had sociologists like myself, and architects who went to the informal settlements, and through participatory methodologies, we mapped what were the needs of these populations. And we identified things like, the right to have water supply, to have electricity supply. In some communities, the women were asking for public laundry places and many other issues. And one issue that was raised by the communities was to have regular collection of household waste, because what they had was only a kind of container in in few spots of the informal settlements. This made it difficult for people to really discard their waste, safely and appropriately. So our team, we started to think, okay, how can we bring regular collection in such a narrow space? So engineers and people like me, we started to plan with the community and get their inputs, and together we framed the first regular collection of domestic waste in a shanty town. So when I looked at looked at waste, I thought, my God, this is a fantastic world. There are so many things at play here. It's not only technology, it's rights, human rights, rights to the city, its dignity. And I started to look at people in those places that were collecting recyclables to sell them and earn a living. It was the first time that I looked at waste pickers who collected. They were not collecting recyclables in their informal settlements. They were collecting elsewhere in the formal city, where waste was richer in terms of content for the purpose of selling to the industry. But it was, during this time, doing this community work, bringing urban infrastructure services to this community, that I started working on waste. And as I was telling my friends that I was working with waste, and people were, what? Sociologists. Waste is not a sociologist kind of topic. So I coined this term in my language. I speak Portuguese, and I coined the term lixóloga because I connected the word lixo, which is waste, with sociology, the ending of sociology in Portuguese, sociologia. So I came up with lixóloga. And from there, I just translated the term into English, and I became the first garbologist.
Wow, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you. So now we would like to ask who we would like to go more in depth into who the workers really are. So who are these workers? What are their backgrounds, and what would a typical day in their lives typically look like?
Well, way speakers, it's a kind of term that we are using for the lack of a better term as yet to group a number of different of people doing, you know, some a sort of different processes, activities in the waste industry. It can refer to those who go out in the street and collect recyclables that are on the pavement, ready for municipal collection. It can be those who are working in a dump site. In many places in the world, particularly in the global south, the final disposal of waste is not done through a proper engineered sanitary landfill. It's usually done in places that we call them open dump sites. It's a place where people just throw the waste. The municipal service collect the waste in the city and just throw that waste and doesn't do any a process of environmental control to safely dispose the waste. And it is in these places where many waste speakers work in many cities across the world. So the term waste speaker can also refer to workers who are actually working in more organized settings. Like here in my country, Brazil, we have a movement of waste speakers cooperatives. Waste speakers formed associations and cooperatives, and they have sorting spaces, like a recycling warehouse, where they have a place where the recyclables they collect are taken to these places for sorting into, do the fine sorting, which is to sort waste by types and then bundle them and process, for selling to the industry. So there is a variety of activities that are grouped as waste speakers. And these are we don't have like official estimates, but we like, because waste speakers, apart from Brazil, who has a statistical system which does official data on waste speakers, in most countries, waste speakers are invisible. So it's very difficult to say exactly how many people are working in this industry, but the estimates are around between 15 to 20 million people working as informal waste speakers. And they are, they use, in the past, we would say that they were present mainly in the geographies of the global south, but the reality in the last 20 years has changed dramatically, and we are increasingly seeing workers who do collection of recyclables in cities of the global north, New York City, Japan, Paris, and other cities in the global north, also have people who call themselves waste pickers.
Yes, so I've heard you say this waste pickers, and they are often described as invisible workers, but in reality, they're the ones keeping the cities clean, as you said, and preventing massive amounts of waste from ending up in landfills. And I know you just explained the process in which they go about it, but have there been any like key moments where you've really seen how their contribution has like changed the city like for the better? Like any defining moments?
Well, I will resort to where I have a more consistent kind of ground experience, and of course, it's my city. Uh, I I have been working with waste pickers here in the city since, as I said, since the mid 80s. And for me, the moment they organized themselves, the first cooperative that they created, which is called Asmari, the first cooperative created here in Belo Horizonte, and it was one of the first cooperatives in Brazil and also in the world. Uh, Asmari kind of, reshaped how the city, engaged with informal waste speakers. I remember my master's was done about, I went to the archives of my city at the city cleaning agency's archives, and I looked how, in the past decades prior to creation, Asmari's creation, which happened in May 1990, how the city referred to people who collected recyclables in the street. And they referred to them as vagabonds, as criminals. And the city itself used to call the police on them and confiscate their materials. And when Asmari was created in the early 90s, I think they were they did a great job in terms of engaging in debates with key actors here in the city. They were doing sit-ins, public demonstrations, participating in public debates. And and my thesis is about that. I was reflecting how by organizing themselves and engaging in public debates and showing that what they were doing was good for the environment. When we didn't, we were not discussing environmental issues back then. The famous Rio 92 event, in which the concept of sustainable development became more famous and its use more widespread, hadn't happened yet. So they kind of brought to us this concept of which I called substantive or enlarged citizenship, which is, to be citizenship is not about the formal connection we have with the state. Citizenship, it's about uh, also uh, about the rights that communities, groups, and individuals are able to access. And one fundamental right is the right to work. So they were arguing about the right to work in the public space, in the public spheres. So when you do that, you are making a huge contribution in terms of the broader discussion about citizenship, about democracy, about what development is. And they were able to help us connect development with sustainability. And this, I think, for me, was a landmark. Uh, Having the pleasure and to be engaged with them, alongside them, during these times is one of the highlights of my career.
Wow, yes, that does sound very inspiring. Thank you for sharing. Moving on to that, you studied waste picker cooperatives, as you mentioned, in places like Belo Horizonte, Bogota, and Sao Paulo. What have these grassroots movements that you described taught you, not only about citizenship in the state, but also about building dignity and power in a sector that's so very often overlooked?
Yeah, Bogota, it's good that you brought this example, because the movement of waste speakers in Colombia, and particularly in Bogota, it's it's an inspiration, and they are one of the most well organized workers. And they were, it's another very good example. Uh, the first cooperatives and the first association and cooperatives of waste pickers there were created because, and this was around, now my memory fails me about the exact year, but it was more or less the same time as Mari was created. Okay, it was late. Asmari was officially created in 1990, but the process of organizing the workers began in the late 80s. So it was at that point in the late 80s that waste speakers in Colombia, they call themselves recicladores in Spanish, and they were, facing the issue of dump sites, the open dump sites being closed. And there was a process of modernization of solid waste management in the country, in which there was a move from open dump sites into sanitary landfills. In a sanitary landfill, not only you have environmental engineering work that is done to properly dispose the waste in ways to minimize the harm to the environment, but also in sanitary landfills, you're not supposed to have people scavenging through, roaming through the waste to reclaim recyclables. So when they looked at the process that was taking shape in the country towards closure of dump sites, they realized that they were going to lose their livelihoods. And they realized that they would have to change how to access waste, and they would have to organize themselves into collectives, and they started the first associations because they wanted to claim that they had the right to access recyclables in the streets. No longer in the open dump sites, they were closing. So by being very smart in identify there was a trend, and before this process completed itself, they started to organize themselves. They started to claim, we can provide the collection of recyclables in ways that are outside the open dump sites, and we can do it in ways that are organized and contribute to the city's cleanliness and to the environment. So the waste speakers in Colombia are a great example of how waste speakers are so resourceful and so creative, and they quickly started to do so, and they started to really and this was happening here also in Brazil at the same time. They were both looking at they were starting to understand, and they didn't put into the words that we today put, which is the contribution waste speakers have to climate mitigation, because we're not discussing climate mitigation in the 80s, but they put it into another words. They said that their work contributed to the environment, that they were environmental stewards. And this was a great contribution, that Brazilians and the Colombians were the first to articulate.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful. And you have an insight on the regulations in South America regarding waste disposal. How do the various administrations approach these informal workers? Are there any cases of partial integration?
Yeah, you see, it was in that time when, in the early 90s, that here in Brazil, we were undergoing the process of redemocratization of Brazil. We had been under dictatorship since 1964, but there was a massive social movement at the late 80s, which enabled us to end the dictatorship. So we were re-democratizing the national state, but also the cities, local administration. And it was within the context of this process that the first elections happened in Brazil after the dictatorship. And the first elections was for city level government. It was only later that we had election for presidency. So we elected progressive mayors in cities like Porto Alegre in the south of Brazil. Porto Alegre is very famous for experience on participatory budgeting. We elected here in my city, Belo Horizonte, progressive mayor, and in São Paulo, and here in my city. When this progressive mayor was elected, we had the chance, myself and many colleagues who were already working on solid waste, to uh, uh, to be invited to be in government. And we had this great opportunity to reshape the solid waste management system. My colleague, Eliana Katia, who is an engineer with whom I had been working for many years on waste issues, she was the kind of president of our cleaning agency, the superintendent, and she formed this team, and I was part of the team together with other people, and we started to consult, to engage the cooperative Asmari, the Waste Speaker Cooperative, and also NGOs that worked in social development alongside Asmari. And together, we co-designed the first contract for waste speakers cooperatives. And in 1993, the cooperative of Asmari signed a social contract with us to be the service provider of our selective waste collection. This was 1993, and this contract it is still on. So it's 35 years or more years without interruption. There were ups and downs in these 35 years in terms of the kind of support the city provides for the cooperative, but this is quite a feat, to have something that has lasted more than 3 decades. It's well into its fourth decade. So Belo Horizonte is one good example. But we have examples from Buenos Aires. We have other examples here in Brazil, but to go to other geographies, Buenos Aires, for instance, the city of Buenos Aires has also been supporting waste speakers organizations for more than a decade, and they have what they call it. Let me try to remember in Spanish. It's like a social contract with the way speakers organizations, through which the city provides, support as a compensation, as a payment for the service way speakers provide in collecting recyclables. And then going back to Bogota had in Bogota, Colombia had approved, the Constitutional Court of Colombia had approved a law in which they ensured that way speakers had the right to bid for contracts. And this was approved many years ago, but it was, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory doesn't fail me, but 10 years ago, the Constitutional Court was approved, but then it was only 10 years ago that the city of Bogota, the mayor, implemented the law. So it has been quite a few years that the city of Bogota has a commercial contract with way speakers. And there is a tariff that citizens pay for waste services in general, and in this tariff there is the payment for waste speakers is built within the tariff that citizens pay. So I'll give these few examples, but also there is Pune, which I think is it's good to mention a geography from Asia. The city of Pune in India has also secured for, I think, 2 decades or even more, a kind of contract, an arrangement with the municipality, in which the municipality supported the Way Speakers Union, KKPKP, to form a cooperative for the services of collecting waste in Pune City. And it's also an example where way speakers have been integrated as municipal service providers. There are differences across these 3-4 examples that I mentioned here, but the main thing is that there is way speakers are integrated as service providers.
Wow, thank you for sharing. It's really great to hear all of these examples of, so-called success stories in the system. Now, to close off, if a young listener wanted to champion gender equality or equality in general in their own waste systems, what's a practical first step that they could take in their own community?
That's a great question. Well, I think the first thing is, we need to map what are the main actors in the waste system of that community, and paying attention not only to the formal actors, actors in the formal system, but all the actors, including the informal actors. And also, I think as you map out and you identify who is there, it's important that when you engage with those that are informal way speakers, that you do, whatever you're doing, be it a mapping exercise, being a participatory planning of actions, that you engage in ways that are participatory, using methodologies that can enable you to listen attentively to what these informal actors are saying. And also, in doing that, being able to identify and to create spaces that women, for instance, where they can express themselves freely. It may be within a mixed sex kind of meetings, but it's important that sometimes you create a safe space, women only space, so that they can express themselves more freely. And I think it's important that in this participatory process of assessing what is happening in that community, that you try to identify what what are the most relevant gaps in terms of addressing gender equity. And in doing so, think about using this identification of gaps in ways that enable you to capture what is needed in terms of practical needs, both for men and for women. Okay, what are the practical needs and what are the strategic needs? And the practical needs, and thinking about, it can be something that it's common for both men and women, like, I don't know how to read and write, and men and women may find themselves both in this situation. And it's important, that you identify what is the practical need. And for women, for instance, they may need something else. They may need a little bit of support to build their capacity in terms of being able to speak in public, which usually for women is a constraint depending on the community they're involved in. So a participatory assessment that takes this into consideration. Then, as you have a clear picture, what are the actors, what are the specific needs by gender in terms of practical and strategic needs, you need to find a place where you engage people in a more organized way. So it's important to try to engage the actors in a sort of participatory platform. You can call it a working group or a committee. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a way to channel the participation in ways that are organized in terms of having regular meetings, and having clear rules for who participate in that platform, and what are the rules for engagement between one another, and that you do it in ways that you come up with an action plan that is co-produced instead of, kind of top-down action plan for that group of people. And then it's important that your action plan, for instance, builds activities that promote knowledge exchanges with that group that is being created, with like-minded initiatives in other cities or even countries, so that people can learn. Like, if I'm talking about a way speaker, we call it, if a way speaker talks about something, a sensitive issue, to another way speaker, is different than me as a technical person is speaking with a way speaker about that theme. It's important to promote this, knowledge exchange between workers. And I think it's important that if you are a young person or whatever your age and you are trying to do that, engage your community, that you remember what your role is. If you want to do things that people at the end of the process will own the process, you have to remember that your role is the role of a facilitator. You are there to facilitate a process. You are there to facilitate an organizing process. You are there to enable that community, that group of people is fully involved, and they are the ones that decides the course of actions. And you need to do all this process building, building time for pause, time for evaluation, throughout the process, and in critical moments. And it's my last thing is in doing all of that, be fun, be creative, engage people using art and culture. What is the cultural expression of that given community? Because this not only will bring fun into the picture, but also may be a very effective way to convey messages, to do sensitization. So use creativity to reach out to people and to engage them. I think it's more or less what I would say.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
absolutely. And absolutely. And for our listeners, if you do take one thing away from this conversation, do remember that waste isn't just a technical problem with the cities, it's a deeply human story as well.
And Sonia, again, we're so grateful for your time here with us today on the podcast.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Now, to stay up to date on Second Life's work, feel free to subscribe to the podcast to get notifications when we release new episodes and visit our website, secondlife.ngo, in order to join or host a cleanup, apply as a volunteer, and donate or partner with us. You can also follow Second Life on Instagram at secondlife.ngo for more sneak peeks at what we get up to. And finally, to our listeners, thank you for your time tuning in, and we hope to have you back next week where we will have a very special guest joining us.
Let's go. Big cold, shake it down.